Hey, Bo. It's been such a long time since we last spoke to each other.
Dude, I was starting to think that you weren't alive anymore.
Yeah, man. Like, at least shoot me a text if you're gonna go off the grid for longer than two
Bro,
minutes.
I was texting you.
No, well, that's a good point. I don't even know where my phone is right now.
Dude, did you see the story of that guy that got lost on a mountain and didn't like pick up the calls from the rescuers on his cell phone because he didn't recognize the numbers?
No
It was like
way,
an R
dude.
it was
There's
an
no
R
way.
slash it was an R slash not the onion
Oh my
headline.
god.
It was an award winner last year actually for how ridiculous it was, but it was real.
That would be like something I would do though, because like if I don't recognize the number, I'm not answering. But I feel like
But if you're on a mountain, it's like you're
okay,
stranded on a
dude. But like think
mountain.
about this though. Like he has low oxygen. Like he can't think all the way straight.
Dude, all right. I you are remember the whole Occam's razor thing? It's like I'm gonna pull
Yes.
this up.
The
R
simplest
slash not
explanation is the most logical.
yeah, and you think this guy was
Or the
dying of
most
like
likely, I mean.
this guy was probably on like a hill in West Virginia. Lost hiker
Or
phone.
there's also like there was an Iceman, like they found a dude who was on a mountain
All
like a
right.
caveman. Remember that one?
So the headline here is hiker lost on mountain for 24 hours, ignored calls from rescuers because he didn't recognize phone number.
Hmm.
Mount Elbert in Colorado. Oh, it is the highest summit of the Rocky Mountains, so possibly. But I am gonna control F oxygen and see if the expert. No, there's no oxygen here, dude.
I mean that
Occam's
has to be
razor.
a factor though, man. Like it's literally like being drunk, like being at a high altitude and then like dying. Isn't
Yeah,
there like on Everest there's like a death zone where if you go over a
yeah. There's
certain
above
elevation
eight
you start
thousand meters.
okay.
No, there's no 8,000 meter peaks. All the 8,000 meter peaks in the world are in that span of mountains, from like Nepal up northeast to like the Afghanistan Himalayas, and
Gotcha,
then
but
the
I mean, like,
Alps up
even if
there.
I like walk up the stairs, I start feeling like lightheaded and dizzy. So I mean, this dude's climbing up a mountain.
Holy, bro, you need to wear like a pulse ox at all times if that's really the case.
No, it's not.
There's some people that have to do that. They wear pulse ox at all times because their oxygen can just dip.
But
And
yeah,
that's
I
not
mean,
good.
I don't know. I'm just saying that could have been a factor. How about that?
Yeah. All right, dude. So let's address the elephant in the room. I mean, the last podcast that we recorded so long ago, we left the audience on a cliffhanger. We were going to talk about, are there too many people in college? I believe we both already came to the same answer, but you claimed that you had notes that you wanted to talk about, and I see your cursor in the Google Doc right now, so surely you're scheming.
No, okay. So I don't even need notes for this, but like, okay, my
Oh,
argument's gonna be like 9.7 out of 10 without notes. It'll be like 10 out of 10 with notes. But here's my thesis for college as it is today. My
and
thesis
are you real
is
quick? Are you bevied up? We got bevies.
I got water right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you derailed me. Oh,
Sorry.
my thesis for college as it is today. So I think that most majors, provided they do not have a lab or major project or performance component in them, could be 2 years long.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. Go on. No, I was just gonna. I don't want to derail your train of thought, so I'm gonna not try to interject with like big points like this. But I was gonna say I agree on the basis of the fact that they basically give you 2 years of quote unquote general education that you have to get done alongside of your required course material.
Yep. And then the second part of my thesis is going to sound weird, but if if you can use Quizlet and get a C or higher in the class, if you can use Quizlet in any way to help you get a C or higher in the class, that class needs to be removed from the curriculum. That's my college thesis. I think if we did the 2 year thing and removed those Quizlet classes, then college would be a lot more effective and people would um, save a lot of money and they would get more out of it because they wouldn't be wasting their time mindlessly quizleting stuff. So that's my college thesis for as it is today.
Okay, so then what do you say about what are you using Quizlet as a proxy for? Because I had an anatomy course in college that, and all anatomy courses are like this. To my understanding, it's all memorization of the human body. But in my anatomy course, it was gross anatomy of all the different compartments of the whole body, and it was an 8 a.m. lecture. But they posted all the lectures online, so I never went to a single lecture. All the lectures just for like peace of mind, so I could, in good faith, take the exam with no surprises coming up on me. I'd watch the lectures on like 2.5 speed, and I would go through and basically screenshot all the graphics that the lecturer was showing, and then I would make flashcards on Anki, not Quizlet, but same idea. Kind of like I would erase what it says. So like if it's pointing to the acromion in the shoulder, the bony prompt or the bone marking there, I would erase acromion and I'd put like one, and then the prompt it would just say one, and then I would have to type acromion and hit enter. So there's an active recall component of it, but the lowest score I got on an anatomy exam using Anki, like literally just exclusively Anki, was a 96. They were all 50-question exams, 2 points apiece. So the most questions I ever missed was two. And I could like train somebody that is taking that course in the future, give them all of my Anki sets, and tell them kind of how I studied, and I'm sure they could achieve similar results doing exactly what I did. Unless
And
I'm just on, that end of the spectrum, and that's kind of what works for me.
well, I guess this kind of like helps my argument a little bit. So you didn't need to take that class. All you need to do was somebody to say, "Hey, here's this big exam to certify you know this anatomy stuff. Here's some sample exams, and here's like a YouTube playlist of like 50 lectures that you can watch." All you had to do was make your flashcards and watch the lectures on 2.5 speed, and you would have that knowledge without the performance art of taking that class. Is that not true?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that works.
and it and that's we'll call that like a fairly difficult class, okay? Like,
But I would also argue that a good anatomy course, and ours did have a lab component with we'd get to observe cadavers, but I'd argue that a good anatomy course allows you to interact with cadavers too, such
yeah,
that
so
you're
like
able to,
something with the lab component. uh,
yeah.
but like, let's say for like an easier class, like I took a solar systems class in college. um I literally went on Quizlet and they had all the homework and like test answers on there for like each chapter of the book because it was just like following like a pre-written book.
Okay,
I
I've never had a class like that since high school where you could go in the back of the book and look for answers. And if that's what you were talking about with like Quizlet classes, I didn't experience that at all in college.
Yeah,
There were
well,
classes certainly that like you could make like former students had made Quizlet stacks for like that chapter, and it was more or less the same. Like the curriculum was slightly altered because of like relevant examples in pharmacy, like relevant current examples or something. But there was never a time when they were like teaching from the book and you could get homework answers online
I'm
ever.
telling you, there's a lot of classes like that are like that, and people will
Yeah,
use
but
Quizlet for all their classes. Like, I
isn't that more prominent in like physics and stuff though? Like physics and math where there's like the textbook, and because in high school that's always what it was. It was physics and math courses. You flip to the back of the book and they have the homework problems there.
well, yeah, I mean for homework, yeah, but for tests, I don't think so. For tests, well, that's a yes and no because if you learn enough patterns, like this is my main reason I'm trying to learn calculus again is because I just learned the patterns. I didn't really have the deep first principles understanding of how to solve the problems. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is
That's
these Quizlet classes are essentially you're wasting the professor's time and you're wasting your own time because you're not actually learning the thing. You're just you're just rotely
okay. Okay.
memorizing solar system facts or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So then I okay, so I experienced in my last year of college, especially half of my junior year as well, um, was like online only. It was all virtual. I felt like my college experience was taken away from by moving, especially the senior year, to total virtual because I had undergraduate research commitments that I had to maintain, going, traveling to and from campus, which was a like 2 hour commute essentially, um, one way. It's like once every maybe 2 weeks, and that got annoying. But then there's also just the component of like not really being able to interact with your professors face to face and stuff like that. But it seems like a lot of the so professors' time is valuable, students' time is valuable. If this doesn't need to be an official course, are you in favor of moving a lot of this stuff to just like a totally virtual basis? And is like the virtualization of school not a bad thing in your eyes, or am I assuming too much? or are these
This
just
one,
like
this one is yes and no because for a, I guess let me go back to our last episode that we recorded so long ago. It's it's that physical, real interaction. So if you have like a really good professor that's engaged with your class, there will be you guys will probably do some problems, and then you'll have like a dialogue, like why is it like this, or you messed up this, or can we do it this way, and you have that feeling of somebody else is going through this struggle with you, like.
so you let me stop you. You had that with your professors? I had those experiences, like the most of the intimate like teaching experiences where they explain why something is the way it is. It's from the professor's mouth at the end of the day, but it's from most directly whoever's directing the recitation, mostly like a graduate assistant.
Yeah, I guess
Because like
just
in lecture, you don't really ever like unless it's a really small class. I never got to have those dialogues, and I got lucky enough to have a lot of small classes. But like in a lecture hall of 400 people, there's not. It's more of a one way. You know what I
yeah, I
mean?
guess in those big general classes it's different.
Did you have a lot of small classes too?
Like towards the end, like in grad school I did, where I
Yeah.
guess that's where I'm getting this viewpoint from. But I don't know, I feel like virtual is, I guess I'm not against virtual for most classes, but
So then, do you think that should be more accessible then? Because I think as it stands, like, well, I had to pay the same amount. I don't know if because my parents are more directly involved with the tuition and the numbers currently as it stands. I haven't had to face the consequences of that yet. But obviously, I'm gonna have to pay student debt back down the road. But I don't think they received a significant kickback my senior year from the move to virtual. It was more or less the same tuition. Is that something that needs to be changed if we were to accommodate for this kind of disparity that you're raising in between like worthwhile classes and classes that can be taught like without really a teacher on a totally virtual basis?
well, the tuition problem is a different problem than the education experience itself. That, in my mind, arises from the fact that the government keeps loaning out money to people that can't pay it back,
This is like a
or they
2008
keep,
housing thing.
well, partially that, and the university keeps letting these people in, and then you're stuck with this loan for life, and then it keeps going and escalating, and pretty soon you could go to like some college and get whatever degree, and you're paying 65 grand a year to go to that college. Do you really need to be paying $65,000 to most likely do something that you could learn mostly on the internet? No. But
But I
the
think it
problem is
depends
that they
too.
keep giving out these loans, and like, for example, like for a house loan, you get background checked, and they really vet you and see if you can pay this loan back. For a fucking college loan, they just like, oh, you want to go to this college? Here's 200 grand. Like, even if this major doesn't have the earning power to make you 200 grand in the future, like, we're still gonna give it to you. That's the problem with the tuition and the prices of everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, so the only caveat that I was going to add is while I disagree, well, while you could totally disagree with how it's set up, if there is a system set up that like you can take the option of going to a school 70 grand a year, but after doing that and going through the, initial expense of that, come out making 300 grand a year. Well, there's a pretty convincing argument to be made, whether or not that's the, peak way to, you know, operate as far as education goes and moving into the career field. That aside, there's a pretty convincing argument to be made to, accrue that debt and come out the other end
Yeah, so
making.
like medical school, and that's perfectly fine. But like, I could go and get like a history degree from like Oberlin or something, and it's like, let's say I get my dream job and I'm like working in a museum and like work my way up to curator. It's gonna be a lifetime to pay back that 250 grand to Oberlin. Like, it's
Yeah, so
irresponsible of the government to be letting us take out loans like that to go to school. It really is.
then I guess at the current moment with that example, it's just is it worth it to you? And I, well,
As
I
an
mean, it's
18-year
just
old, are you really qualified to be making those kind of decisions? Is it worth it to you? That's my other like caveat to that, I guess. My response to your question.
Yeah. So, are there too many people in college?
I think here's my question answer. Are there too few people in trade schools?
I
Like
don't know. I
like
don't know the
plumber,
answer to
plumbing,
that.
electrician, welder, all that stuff.
I guess it depends what metric you're using because like I guess there's some people that really don't care what they're doing as a career, and we need people to be doing trades. And if those people can fill those roles, that's fine. But there are certainly people that are like called to do a specific thing. And I think as it's set up, making it kind of difficult from a financial standpoint and whatnot is bad. But I also hold the opinion that there are too many people in college as it stands. And that I think stems a lot from your argument of like the loans. Like there's people kind of irresponsibly accruing debt for which they have no real plan to pay back. Or rather, they're accruing debt to do something that like has no place in a plan that they hold to move them towards getting out of that debt that they're accruing.
And the government lets them do that, even though like for any other type of loan, you would be rejected immediately.
Yeah, you have to come with a business plan.
But I guess where I wanted to go with this is yes, there's too many people in college because that's like the default option for if you don't know what you want to do is go to college. Now I'm
Yeah,
guessing in the past it never used to be like that, but now it is. And I really think that people who aren't as good as like in traditional like academic settings will probably have a lot more like fulfilling time doing a trade. And I think that kind of work is as we like move forward and forward with this like everything's automated, that work becomes even rarer that people do it. So it's going to be even in higher demand. And also trade work it's doing something in the real world. It's not like fucking like drilling on a spreadsheet 8 hours a day. You actually create something and help somebody. And we don't really talk about that kind of stuff being fulfilling anymore, but it is. It's you're working with your hands. It's very tactile. You have this sense of satisfaction when you're done with it. It's not like an endless 65,000 row spreadsheet, but
yeah. The good news is it seems, at least from a layperson's perspective, that trades are more accessible to the public in terms of like information out there to learn one, the financial obstacle that you have to initially overcome, and like people that would be willing to teach you.
and I think trades also there's like an apprenticeship aspect and
Yeah, definitely.
that's not really in college. There's that's not. I don't think there's really a notion of that unless you do a
Hmm.
research degree. Then you have your academic or your research advisor, and there's a kind of an apprenticeship there. But yeah, I like I said, if college was 2 years, like in my thesis, I think it would be a lot more effective because essentially for like a non-lab, non-project major, those first 2 years you're just like twiddling your thumbs and quizleting your way through classes, right? At least
Yeah, more
that's
or
what I've
less, or
anecdotally observed.
you really just like, yeah, find yourself in a bunch of baloney courses.
But like for example, if I was an accounting major, skipped all those BS classes and just took accounting classes, I would be done in like 2 years or 2.5 years, and I would have the same level of competence that I would have had as 4 years, right? But part of the thing we didn't mention is that the degree, getting a college degree, shows that you can stick with something for a long period of time, for 4 years. That's a long time, and you can jump through seemingly arbitrary hoops. Those are very like employable skills of you sticking with something and then jumping through arbitrary hoops, like filling out stupid reports, or you know what I mean. It shows that you have a certain
Hmm.
stubbornness to do things
Yeah,
that it's not like a direct correlation to you being employable, but it shows that you have like some sort of track record, right? So there is value to that 4 year thing, but
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think
But
that
as
merit is not overweighed by by like the time wasted where you could be learning your actual major faster.
but then there's also the argument that kind of strikes a similar chord. As college becomes more evidently just not the most efficient way to do things from like a time perspective, a financial perspective, even just like in forms of like not even being the best way to learn. Like surely being an intellectual with 500 people is not like the peak of learning performance.
oh,
But I
definitely not.
digress.
Definitely not.
As these things are known and become more common knowledge amongst the public, are we going to move away from college degrees being seen, by employers as like that benchmark of like, is there going to be a different metric that people kind of start? Because right now it's really kind of hard. You can be a very well read person like on I know it gets memed to oblivion, but like um being able to get like research on the internet and people say like like that's typically associated with people that are like anti-vaxxers or alternate medicine. Like, I researched on the internet, the doctor's wrong, but like the people that truly, go in depth on the internet and agree with the mainstream science and delve into the mainstream science, you can be well read on the peak of what's going on and being able to convey that to a potential employer in like a resume without listing like I attended this college, I did this. That's just not something that happens in modern era.
I say for certain degrees, it's already going away. The prestige of the degree is already going away, or for certain jobs, rather. Like for a software job, you could go to a coding boot camp. Those are like
Yeah.
18 weeks long. Those aren't 4 years long. Or for like a traditional Silicon Valley job, if you're dedicated enough, you could go from like zero and just learn your way around a computing system and do leak code for like a year or so. I mean, it depends. Obviously, there's a lot of variables for that, but sometime less than 4 years, you could study leak code and get hired by one of those companies, and they would hire you. Um, it doesn't necessarily need a degree anymore, and especially for software, the degree is like no indicator of the quality of the code you might write. So at least for that kind of job, it's already going away. But I think the other part of college that is hard to replace is proving that you know something. Like I can read all the stuff about vaccines and stuff, but how do I prove that I read it? Like if you have a degree, you prove that you took these tests and read these things, so you were at least some degree aware of what you're talking about, right? Whereas if you teach yourself purely on the internet, there's no accredited way to prove that you know it. That's
Yeah.
that's the big problem with, or the one of the big reasons why college is still not going anywhere, probably.
Yep. That's hard to replace.
But again, with software, you can prove it because you can do those leak code problems, like, and show that you know it. So
Yeah, and same with trades. I mean, software is very comparable to a trade too, because it's very obvious by the quality of your work if you're good or not. Same thing with like a woodworker. Like you can look at a chair and very obviously assess as the consumer if this is like a worthwhile purchase for you. And I'd imagine it's pretty similar in the software world too. But as like I don't know, a chemist, for example, like it's a lot harder to be like, yo, just watch me mix up these chemicals. Like, no, you got to point back to the research that you've done, who you've worked with, your degree.
right, you need that track record.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I think another reason why college is like way more expensive than it should be is because there's so much extra shit now. Like at my college, we had like a concert every single year. And when my dad went to college, they literally just like threw him into the like shittiest dorm ever. And like, all right, here you survive. But now you have all these extra perks on campus. The food is really good usually. Um,
Dude,
there's
the
all
food
kinds of
at
like free
Ohio
perks.
State
The
was
dorms are nice.
crazy. The
But
food at OSU was insane, dude. There was three dining halls on campus. One of them I never ever went to because, and these were like the swipe accessible dining halls. There were more that you could like go and pay like basically a different kind of cash, like slightly more for like different types of food. But those aside, the three main dining halls where like the food was on rotation and they served kind of different stuff every day. There was one that was shitty I never went to. There was one that was right by my dorm that was like the medium one that was really good still, and the fucking Mac Daddy of them on North Campus had it was a double decker, dude. There was a full buffet on the first floor, two full buffets on the first floor, plus a breakfast buffet and an omelet station, and then the second story had like a full Mongolian grill with like a Chipotle station right next to that. It was insane, and there's no way that you're not paying for that out of your tuition.
Yeah,
Like
that's what I'm
even
saying. Like,
beside the
it's
fact if you
so
don't get a
different
meal
now. It's
plan.
so different now from when our parents' generation went to college, where it was just like, okay, at the cafeteria we got like pizza and sandwiches and like, fend for yourself. But now it's like we got a fucking like you said, like
It's like
Mongolian barbecue and
have you ever been to that place Golden Corral?
yes, I have.
That place sucks. I've been
Yes, it
there like
does.
twice. I've been there twice. It's like terrible. But people pay money to go there, like normal people. This place, Traditions at Scott on North Campus, Ohio State, was like four times better at least than Golden Corral. So Golden Corral, how much do you pay? Like $15 or something, like $10
No idea.
probably. Yeah, but like easily you can justify this being like a $30 buffet to like a normal person on like one night, and I had unlimited access to this thing if I wanted. I could go in there every 45 minutes, or I could spend my whole day in there if I wanted, eating the whole day. And it's like really good food and insane. So I think you're completely right. Even if you don't get a meal plan, that's coming out of your tuition nowadays in some form.
So yeah, I think the software thing is going to change this a little bit, and also I think this whole online movement with COVID thing will shake the foundation a little bit because people realize, hey, I don't for most classes other than like the labs and projects, I don't need to be in school like, and I don't even need to be watching this lecture. I could already watch like a world class professor give this lecture off MIT or something, or you know what I mean, instead
Yeah,
of, not to say that the instruction at your university might be bad, but compared to the world class it might be. It's we just don't we're not there yet, but I think these changes could happen.
yeah. My research professor was really good at like providing, like he would set instead of trying to give the lecture himself on a topic, he would send like a lecture from like an old professor that is like famous and be like, watch this.
Yeah, or like going on like from my math classes, some of them we would learn it all on like Khan Academy. Like you know what I'm
Dude,
saying?
Khan
So
Academy is goaded.
exactly. And you're telling me that like these school lectures are like irreplaceable or whatever. No, they're not. The real reason this is happening is because you need to take the test to prove you did it. Like it doesn't matter how you learn it. You just need to pass the test. So it stands to reason that if there's a cheaper and more effective way to do it, it will become the norm at some point.
Yeah, and so how do you feel? How do you feel about the call? And I don't understand because now there's like stipulations to it, but the Democrats are calling Joe Biden to like cancel student debt. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's silly, or do you think that's a reflection on basically this whole conversation we had about why there's too many people in college?
I think that's treating the symptom. It's not treating the problem. Like
Yeah,
you
I
can
agree
cancel
with that.
student debt, but it's going to come back because the same situation that created it is the same one that's still in place. So it's nice and well and good that you want to do this, but it's again, you're treating the symptom. If you really wanted to solve this problem, you'd probably have to like systematically cut back on the loans you're giving out to people, probably subsidize trade schools so colleges don't have this huge pool of people and therefore leverage, and also cut down on the bloat. Like, I guess this might be a controversial opinion, I didn't really give a shit about like my college's like yearly concerts or anything. Like I I went there for school and to hang out with friends. I don't need like a full like stage production level concert to have to enjoy my college experience more. I
Dude,
think,
now that I'm thinking about it, they had that shit at Ohio State too. They had like A-list celebrity perform in the fucking horseshoe for the students.
yeah, man. Again, it's just like this environment that is like conducive to spending a fuck ton of money, and
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
actually
also
crazy.
like canceling student loans is kind of like an indirect way of buying votes from that demographic, but I feel like that's a different issue. But yeah.
Well, it doesn't seem like he wants to do it, but yeah, I agree with you. I think it's treating the symptom. I think the presupposition to that being successful is that like the populace, or the subjective population to the student loan sharks, is quote unquote like woke enough now to realize that it's a problem and not go to college if they're not going to go to college. But I agree with you. I think it's being pushed just as hard. There's not people. I had one teacher at the high school level tell me to maybe consider other options in college, and like even knowing like what my goals were was just like, even if you're gonna go to college, like maybe take your first 2 years at like a community college, because like nowadays college is seen, well, this was partly his argument, but it's like a status symbol. All these high schoolers want to like get to the best college or whatever, but really it's a means to an end. Like if what you're doing really necessitates going to college, like go and get it over with in like the cheapest and most efficient way possible and get on to what you're doing. There's no need for all the bells and whistles like you're saying, because it's just gonna come out of your pocket at the end of the day. But it seems like people are liking the bells and whistles, so I don't think much change is gonna happen, even if cancellation were to occur en masse.
Uh, Another like an interesting book about the like best college and status part is called Excellent Sheep by William Deresiewicz. I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but Colton actually recommended it to me. It's a really interesting book about like how college admissions created like this generation of like fake people that are like air quotes well-rounded, and you basically have to like live out this like fake life that you might not want to live out just to get into a good college, like get a 4.0, do like as many fucking extracurricular as you can, and and like never sleep and be like a wholesome person. And yeah, it's a really interesting book. Excellent Sheep. Everybody that wants to learn more about like college admissions should check that book out.
Yeah, I'll put it on the to read list. That sounds like a good one.
It's pretty short too. I got through it in like three or 4 hours or something.
But I mean, I'll have to read the book to be able to formulate a better opinion. But I think, from my perspective, it seems like if you do what you want to do in high school and like perform well in school, and aside from that, pursue only the extracurriculars that really speak to you and really only do what speaks to you, but like don't waste your time doing something that you can't talk about. So like playing video games and uh, getting drunk or something would be like two good examples of time waste. So if you're just like an active like member of the community, or pursuing like what you want to do in life in high school, I think it's really easy to portray that in a good light to college admissions. So that's my stance on the matter right out the gate. But I'll read the book and refine
Yeah,
that
I mean
certainly.
it's like a lot. The argument is like a lot more nuanced than what I said,
Yeah.
but like that's like the gist of it though, is that it's kind of like this arbitrary like well-rounded person stuff. Cuz yeah, well, you'll just have to read the book. Like I I don't want to be like a that dude again, but you just have to read it to like get the full argument.
All right, I'll take your word for it. So I also have written down here, if you want to get into this too, college kind of being the premier certification for like a good person in the prospective employment field. How about academic papers being like considered the only valid way of communicating about like important topics? What are your thoughts?
This one is a little complicated too, because again, there's a reason why academic papers have become the standard way. It's because, well, for example, I did my master's degree in big data. We sent the paper based on my research, me and my lab mates' research, to IEEE Big Data, And in this big data journal, in that like it's like a quarterly publication or whatever, there's like 100 papers, each one about big data. Each paper is like 10 pages long, and you really have to squeeze to get into that 10 pages. So the medium of the paper forces you to distill your ideas into the most convincing and like crystallized version possible. And then the fact that it has to be tied into a journal where it's easily accessible by experts of the field, that's another bonus for the paper, right? So that's two bonuses for papers. Um, the third bonus why, or the third reason why papers are important is, like we said in episode 2, writing allows you to create a more nuanced argument, even though it's harder to drink, or not to drink, to drink in. Yeah, it's harder to drink in. You can create a more nuanced and more like air quotes permanent argument than you could with just a video. So those are like the three reasons, at least that come instantly to my mind, why academic papers are good.
Yeah.
Now, for the flip side, it kind of gets into the flaws of like science itself. So, like for psychology papers, I mean, I don't want to pick on psychology, but like for psychology papers in particular, a lot of these experiments they cannot be replicated and they can be falsified. As in the person could be lying about what they're telling you, right? Whereas if you're doing like a physics experiment, the weight of the ball you're dropping from the Tower of Pisa or whatever, you can't fake that weight, right? Or if you could, somebody could replicate your experiment. So I think the main reason why academic papers, well, there's two reasons. The first reason why academic papers might be bad is because their experiments cannot be reproduced at a statistically significant rate and they can be falsified. And I think the second reason why academic papers can be bad is because I'm trying to think of like a good way to put this. People like they like scrap. It's quid pro quo. Like you reference my paper, I'll reference your paper, right? So they kind of like artificially inflate these citation numbers and reference numbers. So a paper could have like 30 citations or whatever, but 15 to 20 of them are from the professor and his or her buddies that they all like citing each other's papers. You know what I mean? So it kind of creates this echo chamber of ideas because everybody wants to cite everybody else's paper to pump that number up. That's to me that's the other bad thing about academic papers.
Yeah. I I agree with your first point. I agree with your points as to why academic papers are good. Um, as to the claim about being able to falsify data, I would contend that that's why reproducibility is like a big thing. Like for an idea to be established, it really has to be reproduced, no matter how convincing like the initial finding was. Um, and with regards to the whole citation thing, I've never I didn't know that was like a big issue. I've never really thought about that. I mean, like, sometimes it's pretty obvious. Like, when you see a paper with like 1,200 citations versus a paper with like 10, it's like, okay, like the one with 1,200, you know, let's look at that and kind of see what it has to say because that seems to be a well received paper in the field. And then if the one with 10 is still really relevant to what I'm researching, I'll read that as well. And, the opinion will be noted as such. But I never really look at citations as like a huge metric kind of beyond very stark examples where like if there's a paper that kind of matches my query and it's like very largely cited like in the thousands or hundreds, I'll give it a good read. But I never like value one paper over another because it has like five more citations. But I'm also not in academia, so
Well, I think the kind of thing you're overlooking here is that there could be a researcher that makes these like 10 citation papers, but they write like four shitty papers a year for like 20 years. So all of a sudden, what's 10 times 4? 40 times 20, 800. All of a sudden, you have this. this researcher who's been doing shit research for 20 years, and they have 800 citations and like a huge H index, but really their science is terrible, and the system like they live in like prop them up, and suddenly they think they're an expert because they have 800 citations. You know what I mean?
Yep, I do know what you mean.
Whereas
Which is
like the
why
one person who does a really good science paper that gets 800 citations, like, and they that's like the only good paper they write, they like are a great scientist. Like, but the number's the same at the when it all shakes out.
yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's two things to be said. One, we should just separate citations, number of citations, from whether you're a good scientist or not. Two, if you really want to like start measuring dicks about who has the most citations, make it a metric of unique citations by like unique people, like to totally wash out the whole nepotism thing where it's like this guy just, like we need like an impact factor here sort of thing, you know what I mean? Like if they really want to make a metric of like who's the best scientist, make a better metric, because as like clearly just gross number of citations doesn't tell you who's the best scientist at all, because what if you're in a field that's a very niche, and two, just the nature of the field makes it very like slowly evolving. And I can't think of a specific example, but just a field where publications aren't like flying out left and right. Like in chemistry, for example, if you are able to create a new molecule, you can write a paper on how you made that molecule. And assuming that paper is all well and good, it's going to be in the academic literature. So papers come out every day. But, in a slightly different field, like, I don't know, maybe an ecosystem that we know a lot about and have like characterized a lot of species, like finding new species in that ecosystem might not be as like a daily basis sort of thing. Um, but at the end of the day, like if you have low impact citations, you can have those all day long. It doesn't make you a good scientist. You know what I mean? Like as you already
Yeah,
said.
I think. Well, I don't think there's a metric like that, at least not that I know of. It's funny that like you mentioned the number of citations, but that's like the original Google algorithm was was like ranking academic papers. The one that had more citations would be more relevant in their search engine because originally it was for searching through academic literature. It was literally just purely the number of citations made the paper appear higher on the list. So
Yeah, so I think there's something to be said about optimizing that sort of thing. Like there might even be market space for somebody to come in and make a search engine that's just better for getting results relevant to your search as a scientist, and would give you, maybe an array of ideas or an array of results based on your query that are, because when I search Google Scholar, oftentimes I don't remember if I was searching Google Scholar or what I was searching, but when I was searching specifically for this like a project in the research lab, the same paper kept popping up over and over again, and like I searched one thing, and like there would be 500 results, 200 of them would be like the same paper sort of thing. So it was really like unoptimized. And if Google's as unoptimized as you're saying, and it's just like sorting based on
well, I mean that was
citations,
the first Google, but yeah.
then surely there's space for somebody to come in and make a more relevant, array of results based on what you query to make you do better science as a researcher.
Yeah, I think Google Scholar is actually not bad.
Yeah, I don't actually think I was using the Google Scholar. It was probably like SciFinder or something. It was something like chemistry.
I'm sure like it's like I'm sure like I'm 100% sure the algorithm is a lot more sophisticated now than
I
just
think it
like
was
purely
SciFinder.
cunning up citations, but
So I think what I did is I drew the molecule in ChemDraw and then searched for journals based on that molecule. And then the same article came up like 200 times. And then like this other article came up like 180 times. And then there were only 300 results. But like the 20 that were unique articles were like very interspersed between these like two that just kept popping up. And I was very frustrated with that. There's no way to separate it. And I would assume it's just due to an improper algorithm, kind of as you alluded to in a slightly different context with Google's initial sorting process. But like I was saying with the like impact factor metric, that's exclusively like if scientists really, if they want to have a dick measuring contest, which it seems like they do a lot of the times, then make a better metric and like explain why that metric's a better metric, and then use that metric instead of like using a metric that can be heavily swayed by just nepotism. Because you can cite something in a paper and like just very briefly mention it. Like you can mention it in your introduction, and you still have to cite it
Right.
when you're introducing your paper. You'd be like, many people have heard of this, and this, and premier research coming out of this lab
The problem,
has.
like the main problem with this like impact metric is it's subjective. That's the problem. So
Yeah, it's. I mean,
everybody's gonna want to make their own impact metric, right?
it's
Whereas
always
like
going to be
just purely the
subjective.
citation number is not subjective. It's you can't like it is what it is.
It's always going to be subjective, and that's why like the logical conclusion to this is just to do good science and not like let your kind of actions speak for you instead of trying to claim false notoriety based on this number that you know is inflated. And like deep down, if you're doing shitty science, like I would assume that you know that you're complacent in doing shitty science.
I don't know, man, because like I'm sure there's people out there that like publish a paper, get like 10 to 20 citations, and be like, all right, I'm a badass. Like you can't fuck with me. I'm doing great science right now. I know there has to be stuff going on like that.
Yeah,
And like, okay, even though it's air quotes bad science, it still takes a lot of work to do that research and like publish that into a paper still. It's not like they're just like slapping together stuff. It's just the process itself is flawed. That's all.
yeah. So then if the only way to like verify those results is to reproduce the results, and it takes a lot of time to both like make the initial science that arguably shouldn't have happened in the first place because it's shit science, and to reproduce them to verify that it's shit science. What do you say about the like just noise being broadcasted into the academic sphere by these like senescent scientists? How does that speak to the whole process if there's just like crazy inefficiencies? Or is it just like unavoidable?
I
Is this like
think
the only true way?
I mean deep in my heart of hearts, I think it's just unavoidable because that's just all of human dialogue. There's just a lot of noise in general, and there's very few salient things that just rise to the top. Like ideally, it wouldn't. I guess really the main problem for me isn't like the bad science. It's like the inflated egos of the people who think they're smart or who think they're good at science. That's my problem. And then they get a blue check mark on Twitter and tell everybody how to live their lives. I guess I could care less about, or I
Yeah,
couldn't
but
care less
that's a
about
whole
their.
different issue. Like
Yeah.
I don't care how settled the science is on anything or how right one person thinks they are about something. Like if somebody wants to do something within reason and not hurt other people, they should have the freedom to do that thing that they want to do
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my problem is
and face the consequences.
yeah. I don't know. That's a weird one, but it's definitely not like you can't avoid that. It's gonna like no matter what you're doing. And I've read plenty of bullshit like hard science papers too, where it's they'll like write a paper. Oh, we did this cool thing, but really it was just like a slightly different way of doing something somebody already did. You know what I mean? Like okay, like you didn't have to write a paper about this, but well, whatever.
Yeah, I've also had my fair share of those.
But
So then,
the part of I guess the part of that is like publish or perish though, which is a real thing. Like
yeah,
if you don't
that is
publish
true.
papers, you won't get funded and your lab's going to die. You'll get no students and you won't be able to do good research. So sometimes you have to write that paper where okay, I did this slightly different thing and it got like a slightly different result. So I guess I can see where they're coming from with that, but I wish it didn't have to be like that, but it does.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, we've established too many people in college. Did we establish not enough people in trade school? Was that
I
a thing
think
too?
I think I think so.
I think the only disagreement I had with you on the trade school stance was I don't think it needs to be subsidized. I don't like government subsidizing things. And also the trade school example, I think you said that like if there's not enough people in trade school, the demand's going to go up for these like professions, especially with the automation of things. It's only going to increase demand. Well, if that's the case, then I think the prospect of like making the money that you're gonna make in that career, driven by the demand, is
But
enough
it's
and
not
doesn't.
part of the cultural consciousness, though. Like the
Well,
cultural
then yeah,
consciousness is
spread
like if you don't
awareness.
know, go to college. Where that's what like yeah, I don't know how to make that. It's not
I
necessarily money because the money is usually really good. It's and if you like go to a trade school and become like an apprentice plumber or whatever, you're probably making 60 grand a year. And if you go to like a business school that's really expensive, you're paying 40 grand a year. That's 160 grand, and you're probably making 40 grand a year when you get out. Like you're already way in the red. And the person who just went to plumbing school for sure didn't pay 160 grand, and they're making 60. So you're
yeah,
yeah.
yep. And then from there, did we move straight into the conversation about academic papers, or was
Yeah, I
there
think so.
an intermission? So then, yeah, I guess we both agreed that process can be slightly optimized, but honestly, in my eyes, as long as human emotion doesn't get into it, and that's a big if, and that if is never going to be met. But I think it's a great process. It's perverted by human emotion and impulsiveness and
Yeah.
then
Well, let's put it
nepotism.
this way. I don't think I could make it any better. I think it's a battle tested process. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, in no way, yeah. It would have to be like some fundamental change in the way we do in the way we present data and information for the academic paper system to change, in my opinion.
Okay. Well then let's do a brief wrap up of we kind of discussed a lot of like problems so far on the pod. Let's do like a little quick 5 or 10 minutes on like just proposed solutions to the main, I guess like any of the three things if you have any solutions or fixes. And I
To
guess
which the academic papers thing or the college
no,
thing?
everything. So I think we discussed like two kind of main topics about the college thing. So like too many people going to college as well as the whole trade school alternative. And the third thing we talked about was like the academic paper problem. So if you have any three solutions, which it seems like you hinted to not having one for the academic paper. So if you have a solution to any of the two remaining problems with college, I'd be interested to hear it.
I mean, the
I
solution is my original thesis. I think most degrees, if they do not have a heavy lab or project component or performance component, should be 2 years, and all the classes that are Quizletable should be removed. That's my solution. That's my thesis,
So
and
then,
it's yeah.
to go further, do you think that those virtual classes then, because I'm assuming that you would want to retain all of the in-person stuff at the university level, would you want those virtual classes then to move to still the university level, disseminated by the university at a lower cost, or taken up by a different private enterprise,
It should be a lower cost, but that's never
but
gonna happen.
still okay?
Because, like I said, I could give you for that anatomy class, I could give you like a YouTube playlist of anatomy lectures, a
Yeah, yeah,
list
yeah.
of terms to memorize, and some sample tests, and you would pass, 100%.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
the
Anything
cost
else?
the cost to doing that is very very low.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
not like $3,000 a tuition hour or what or excuse me like $1,000 a tuition hour or whatever.
Yep. No, I agree. Anything else as far as fixes outside of the reiteration of your thesis?
If you know a way to change the cultural consciousness on on going to college and going to trade school, let me know. I don't know. That would be my other
Gotcha.
fix. Somehow change that mentality.
I guess my theoretical fix is along similar lines as you. I would suggest though that especially for the virtual classes, that they be so with college is not only um the financial aspect of it, which you hinted on, like, making the virtual classes obviously available for less, if not free, but there's also like the whole point that we talked about where with relation to that book that you suggested, um, you have,
Excellent
you have to
cheat.
prove yeah, you have to prove yourself to the college. You have to show that you're like an eligible person to be there and be taking these classes. Well, if you're just being exposed to online like one way interaction, that condition doesn't need to be met in my eyes. So I think it should be not only made cheaper, but like as an accessibility level beyond financials should be made more accessible to the public. Um, so the trade school problem, I think that there needs to be a change, and this is going to be a lot more broad scope level because I don't have any specific suggestions for how to fix this. But like I said, I was only exposed to one teacher that was like pro, like kind of alternate route, not just going to like like a really well recognized university for a full 4 years. He advocated for if you're not sure about college, think about trade school, but if you're dead set on college, make it as cheap as possible, sort of thing. So there needs to be a shift in how it's viewed by like the high school student body, how trade school is viewed. Like you said, right now it's like if you're not sure, you go to college. And trade school, at least where I was, trade school was looked at as like kind of cringe. Like if you went to trade school, you weren't like considered like intelligent.
Yeah, and
And
that's so whack. Yeah, in my
yeah,
opinion, it's so
so
whack.
that needs to be shifted somehow. And then as with regards to the academic papers, like I said, I think the system as it stands is great, and it incentivizes a lot of the right things, and as it works, it's pretty slow, but eventually you should get to more towards the correct and further away from the incorrect. The only thing that I would suggest changing, and again, this is going to be broad scope because I have no specific suggestions, but changing the culture in academia to be less of like again, like I keep saying, like a dick measuring contest and like an ego thing, and more driven towards like just pursuing the truth. But again, that's like sort of a paradigm shift that
Yeah,
can't really like you can't force a paradigm shift organically very easily.
and it's
So
also like the tendency of systems to go to their lowest energy state.
yeah,
The lowest
entropy.
energy state is just counting citations. So
Dude, go on. I just have a really
okay,
good thought I'm gonna hold.
yeah, I just wanted to say like it's that way in the workplace too. The the lowest friction way is the way it's gonna go. Period.
Yeah. How long in the tooth are we right now? I haven't been recording
We're
in
at
fear that it would corrupt.
57 minutes.
57. You want to wrap her up?
Yeah, let's
All right.
wrap
I have
it
a
up.
good tidbit to end off on. This is like a shower thought I was thinking about at work.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, I don't know how I was originally thinking about this, and it might come to me as I'm talking about kind of what the thought came to. But at 0 Kelvin, right? 0 Kelvin, I was always taught that like all kind of particle movement stops. Is this correct?
I mean that's
Absolute
what I've
zero.
heard. Yes, that doesn't.
Okay. So I just remembered the initial thought was one of my coworkers was talking about like electricity or it being cold or something, and I said, at 0 Kelvin, would there be any electricity? Like would electrons transmit? I looked it up. Electrons still move. Okay, so at 0 Kelvin, the laws of physics don't break down. But if you were at 0 Kelvin, would entropy still apply? Because if macro particles or like atoms weren't actually vibrating or in solids or anything, then all of these processes that would normally crumble buildings over centuries or just lead to entropy kind of playing out and things returning to the lowest energy states away from a state of stability, would that occur at 0 Kelvin? That's my shower thought. That's what I want the
Yes,
audience to think about.
my shower thought is yes. I'm not gonna tell you why though.
Your shower answer is
Shower
yes.
answer rather. Yep.
You can
Yes.
tell me why off the pod.
No.
And
Nobody gets that answer. Just yes.
yep. Oh shit. Not even telling me. All right. Yep. So think about that and post your comment below, maybe, if we have any listeners yet. And Aaron, if you have a better way, you're usually pretty good at these, so I'll let you do the official sign off. Because last time, I will say, on the last episode that was so long ago, I did express an interest in signing us off on that one, and I was not able to sign us off.
Okay. Well, I mean, since you're so keen on it, like in that long intervening time we had between episodes, I had a lot of time to think about my mistakes, and I hereby give you the outro for this one if you so choose to take it.
No, I realized that my cavalier nature and my oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess we'll just go with willingness since I can't think of a good word. But my willingness to want to do the outro was misguided, and I realized that you are actually the superior outro. So I give you my blessing, Aaron, and all future episodes.
Okay. All right, guys. thanks for listening to episode 3 of the Bow and Aaron podcast. We had a lot of fun recording this, and we hope you guys will have, if not fun, you won't be agonized and tortured listening to this, because in all likelihood, you probably will be, because college is boring and you should just like go and play video games all day.
But I
So
think
see you guys for
college is
episode 4.
boring, but I think the conversation was